Hello Internet. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to bind your JavaScript implementation with your HTML and CSS. So it looks like this. Now, if you have been following through our videos, you'll see that in one of our previous videos, we did something like this using only HTML and CSS. However, this is just 20 products. What if you wanted to present about 1,000 products? It means your HTML code will be very voluminous and we don't want that. So we want to write a few lines of code in our JavaScript file and then present it on our HTML like this. That's the idea of DOM manipulation. DOM stands for Document Object Model, where we present and manipulate data on our HTML from our JavaScript file. So let's go straight into the code and understand what DOM manipulation means. Meanwhile, before we go on to use DOM to represent our web page like this, we need to understand it. And I'm going to use a very simple example of a counter application to make us understand what DOM manipulation is. So here is it. This is an empty. This is an empty. This is a clean Canva, right? Browser. So we are going to. So this is our previous class. Remember, in our previous class, I also taught you how to, manipulate arrays, right? So, and I said that you can present your arrays this way, and you can, like this. This is a list of products, list of cards. You can present it this way, and you can present it also in a tabular form like this, depending on how you want it. You just receive it as an array, and you present it however you want to present it. So in this video, we are going to be learning DOM manipulation so that we don't just do it from our HTML CSS. We're going to be doing it from our JavaScript. Okay, so let's comment our previous class here. All right, good. So we have a clean slate and we have this. So these are HTML. So I also commented everything. So we have a very clean this thing. All right, so I'll go to our CSS. Okay, so we have this. Okay, very good. So this is the CSS. Let me also comment everything so that we have remember we're going to be building on what we have before. So here on our HTML file, let us create a counter application. And what's a counter application? A counter application is just a very simple application that helps you to increment the counts and also decrement a particular count, right? Okay, let me make sure this is saved. Okay, good. So look at our browser here. Let's create the counter application. We're going to say div, and then we're going to say here, let's give it an ID of counter. So remember, this ID is a selector, right? It's just a selector, just like with the way we have class, right? But I'm using ID in this case. Okay, so we're going to create two buttons. We want to increment the count and the other to decrement the counts. So the first button, I'm going to call it ID, right? Decrement, and then here I can put a minus sign, right? And then do the other button and then call this increments, and then here we'll give a plus sign. So we have this. When we okay, now look at it. Looks okay, but this counter we want to put something like maybe an initial value, something like 10 or whatever it is. So this is 100. So the idea is that when we click on this plus, right, it's going to increase to 101, 102. As long as you keep clicking, it keeps increasing. And here, and when we click this minus sign, it keeps reducing, right, by 1. So that's the idea. So this is our counter, right, and that's the div that holds this value, and then this decrement is the button that holds this, and the increment is the button that holds this. So how can we manipulate this thing from our JavaScript? So to do that, we would do this. So come here and do const, let's say counter. You can give it this variable any name you like, it's okay. So we're going to say counter, or let me just call it counter div so that it doesn't confuse us. Counter div, right? So I'm going to say documents dot get element by ID, and I'm going to pass in the counter here. Make sure you're passing in the same counter here. Make sure it's the same spelling, everything. So I just copy it to avoid mistakes. I paste here, and then I'm also going to repeat that for the buttons, these decrements and increments. So I'm going to come here, go to my thing and say const decrement. I'm going to call it decrement button, right, this way. And I'm going to say document dot get element by ID. I'm going to call it, all right, so I want it to get me the element that has the ID decrement. So it's going to get this button. Are you seeing it? So I'm getting this button as JavaScript, right? So I'm getting this button here. So I'm getting this div here, right? So it's like a way of selecting that div from my HTML in my JavaScript. Do you understand the idea? It's very interesting. So here I want to also select that increment button. So remember this increment button, I want to select it. So I'll just come here, I'll go to my JavaScript file. I have selected it just by getting this element. I'm getting the element with the ID, and then I give it a variable, right? I believe this is very easy to understand now. Very good. Now, but look at this. This is 100, but I do not want to initialize it from the front end. So I'm going to remove this 100. I want to pass the value from JavaScript. So I'm going to initialize a count to maybe 0. So I'm going to say let count equal to 0, and then good. So count is 0. Of course, we're not going to see any change, right? So I want to put this count inside this counter div. So I'm going to do this counter div. There is a particular method, inbuilt JavaScript method. So I'm not writing it from my head. It's already inbuilt. So counter. So I'm going to do counter div. This counter div, I want to embed this value of counts 0 inside this counter div. So to do that, I'm going to say the text contents. I'm not going to say equal to counts. So what I'm saying, I want the contents of this div to be this value here. And once I do this and I save my work, I'm going to see 0 here. So even if I change this to anything, even if I change it to a string value like hello, right, and save, you see hello here. But I want to use 0, an integer, so that we'll be able to do some arithmetic operation on that. So now we have this. But of course, when I click this minus, it's not going to do anything. Plus, it's not going to do anything because I have not written the function. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to write the functions to do that. So to do that, this decrement button, or let's start with the increment button. I'm going to take this and I'm going to say increments dot add event listener. Add event listener. This add event listener is, we want to tell, remember we have selected this increment button. We want to tell this button to listen to an event. So this also is an inbuilt function, right? It takes in two parameters. The first, it takes in the event you want it to listen to. So we want it to listen to a click event. There are so many events, right? There's hover, mouse, a lot of events. I can't even, remember all of them now. So we want this button that we have selected, the increment button, to listen to an event. So once it listens to that event, it will be waiting for that event. Remember, this is an event. If I click on this, it's just waiting for a click. Remember, clicking is the event. Wait for the event, and once that event happens, do this. So I'm going to write an arrow function here. So this arrow function, we're telling it to do this. What are we asking it to do? We want this count to increase by 1, right? So we're going to say count would now be equal to count plus 1. So what is happening here is that once it's clicked, I want this count. Remember, we initialize it to 0, but once you click it, it should update. The new value of this count should now be what? The old value plus 1, right? The old value, this is the new value, will now be the old value. Whatever the old value is, at this time is 0 plus 1. And once we do that, the next thing we want to do, we will now want to update that text content, right? The text content is still having the 0 at this point, right? So we need to update it here. We need to write. So we're going to do something like this. We're going to write a function. We're going to say const update update count equal to so we're going to say once this happens, just counter div dot text content will now be equal to the counts, right? So we're going to say this update counts, just call this function here and then passing this, save this. So this is saying once it listens to the click event, once a click happens, the counts, the new count value should be the old count value plus 1. It's now what? So we now have a new count value. So this new count value, right, is now update it to pass this new count value into this counter div dot content. So we'll say, so when you save your work and do this, do plus, and you see that it's increasing, right? But once you click on the minus sign, nothing is happening because we've not created a function for that. So to do that, just copy this and paste it here and make sure we are doing the same thing for the decrement. Come here, do this, and make sure you do this to minus. If not, you still have the same plus happening, right? Make sure you do this to minus, and that will be all. So when you do this, when you minus, you see -1 plus 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 plus. But question is this, it's going below 0. So in order to make it not go below 0, you can write a condition, say if, an if condition, say if counts, it should decrease only if count is greater than 0, right? Only if count is greater than 0, then it will now do this implementation, right? Or you can do as well, do it this way and copy this. This can also work, right? Save it, and then it's not going to increase. So I can keep decreasing it. Once it gets to 0, it's not going to do that. So that's it. But let me make it a bit, let's just one line of code so that we don't have to write plenty codes and do this. So we still have the same thing. Increase, it will not decrease below 0. So we have this. Now lastly, let's see how we can style these buttons. We want to make this particular button green background and this one with red background. To do that, you just come here and say decrement button equal to we can say we can say decrement button dot class name. We want to give it a class name of, we can call it decrement style. Let me make sure that the spelling is correct. Decrement style, make sure it's in a double quotes right, because it's going to be seen as a variable. So we're going to do the same thing for the increments. I'm going to say this increment button, we want to style the increment button too. I'm going to say increment style. So come here, this decrement style, go to your HTML, your CSS, right? Just do this dot decrement style, give it a background of red, right? And then do the same thing, increment style, give it a background of green. Yeah, good. And save your work, come here, save your work, and then you see this is green. So what happened is that here, right, we are asking it to select this decrement button. We're actually attaching the class name named decrement style. So whatever property you give to this class will happen to that button. That's what is happening here. Did you see that? So you can come here and add a lot of other things. You can remove the border. You can decide to remove the border. Border will be none. Oh, sorry. The border will be none. What else? Yeah. And see, that's all. You can come here and do the same thing here. And then you can add a lot of other, and we have our applications working. Plus. Do you see that? So this is a counter app, right? This is using DOM manipulations to build a counter app. Thank you very much. In our next video, we're going to be dealing with, we're going to be doing the real thing, right? Present our data just like this using the DOM manipulation. It's going to be interesting. And also, we're also going to do some API calls. So, stay tuned and make sure you are you stay tuned for notifications, right? Thank you and have a blessed day. See you in the next video. Bye.